What a delight it is to be with you all this morning. They had lived together long enough to know, Gabriel Garcia Marquez writes, that love was always love, anytime and any place. But it was more solid the closer it came to death. Love is always love, and it is more solid the closer it comes to death. We know this all too well after the past year we have endured together. Separate, but together in our homes. Some of us actually in our workplaces, each of us having our own unique experiences of this pandemic, such that sometimes it can be hard to relate to one another. For some of us, the past year has been an exercise in mating in captivity. For others of us, the past 12 months have been the loneliest of our lives. Some of us are stir-crazy and desperate for social interaction. Others are delighted to no longer have to make up excuses in order to trade a dinner party for a good book. Some of us are weary of our isolation and longing to be with people. And others of us have become accustomed as essential workers to the ever-present fear that sits kind of on your shoulder as we go to work each day in crowded hospitals and stores and schools. No matter our experience of this time, however, we have learned anew the enduring power of community, have we not? The enduring power of family and friends, and above all, of love. For it is love that binds us to those we bring into the inner sanctum of our hearts, be we related by blood or by choice. It is love that connects us even when we are separated by distance or illness or safety protocols. It is love that enables us to feel that we are not alone, even when we are lonely. It is love that helps us remember that we are indeed, figuratively, of course, all under the same umbrella, protected in a sense, as we journey with kindred spirits. So this morning, this Valentine's Day morning, I want to speak to 3 different forms of love that have been drawn into sharp relief by these times. Eros, romantic love, philia, the love of friends, and agape, unconditional love for one's fellow human being. We'll look at each of these and what we have learned about them during this year of pandemic life and what they ask of us now, what they offer us now. First, Eros. In his delightful new book entitled Plague Literature, Lessons for Living Well in a Pandemic, philosopher Dustin Peony seeks lessons for our time in ancient literary works written during previous plagues. In chapter 3, he explores the admonition to fall in love to escape the deadly plague, with a close examination of a fascinating manuscript from the year 1522, written in Florence and attributed to Niccolo Machiavelli, but most likely actually partially or fully composed by his patron, Lorenzo di Filippo Strozzi. The topic? Romantic and erotic love in the midst of the Black Death. Pandemics, Peony reflects, are tragedies which bring universal suffering and distress and end in funerals. The lesson of this work, he says, is that nonetheless, in times like these, we may, quote, discover new purpose and alight upon new values, or arrange our values in new orders. Prudence demands, the philosopher writes, that we continue to look for love even in the time of cholera. We continue to look for love even in the time of cholera. Romantic love in plague times, though, is not as easy as Machiavelli or Strozzi may have made it out to be. Online dating has taken on new meaning, for better or for worse. Same with long distance. And some of us in long-term partnerships have struggled, perhaps, to remember why we got into them in the first place. Case in point, to love, author Michelle White writes in this week's Modern Love column in the New York Times, to love is to choose and to keep choosing. She tells her pandemic love story in stark and painful prose. She numbers the days. On day 25 of sheltering in place, her husband of 30 years moved out of their house. On day 110, he moved back in. In between were weeks of heartbreak and soul searching, swiping left and right on dating apps with no actual in-person dating, reliving a lifetime together, imagining a different story for the next 3 decades. When her spouse had processed his desire to leave the marriage and was ready to return, White wasn't sure she wanted him to come back. He gave her time, and they eventually met in the middle. We had stood on the edge, teetered and stumbled, she writes. When he had wanted to jump, I pulled him back. When I stepped forward, he grabbed me. Ultimately, we held hands, each keeping the other from falling until we could turn around and choose each other again. We have learned enough to know that the cliff is always there, and that to love is to choose and keep choosing. Absence, they say, makes the heart grow fonder. What then does familiarity breed? What is the result of more togetherness than any of us would have wished for? Tension, I think. Strain. The day-to-day survival mode that so many of our households are operating under is challenging, to say the least. Bone-crushingly weary-making, if we are being honest. And still, to love is to choose and to keep choosing. To love is to wake up on pandemic day 350 and find one small thing for which to thank our partner. One small affirmation to offer our beloved. To love is to choose I'm sorry over I told you so. It is choosing what is best for each other, even if that means heartbreaking time apart, even if it means staying, even if it means reworking what is not working and celebrating what is. Eros in the time of Corona, whether we are in a long-term partnership or just starting out or looking for love, looks different than it did before. And it looks suspiciously the same. Because the passion and desire we feel for another must be tempered and balanced with the love we nurture for ourselves. That has always been true. And it must be grounded in the day-to-day reality of each other's humanness, each other's foibles, and our inconsistencies. And the truth is, no one person, even when we are quarantined, can meet our every need. It is impossible, the poet Rupi Kaur writes, for one person to fill you up, in all the ways you need to be filled. Your partner, she says, can't be your everything. And on the facing page of her new book, she says this: I can live without romantic love, but I can't survive without the women I call friends. They know exactly what I need before even I know it. The way we hold space for each other is just different. French psychiatrist and author François Lloyd writes that very different from eros is philia, a serene love much more akin to friendship with its reciprocal kindnesses. In caring for the happiness of our friends, and in having our happiness cared for and cultivated by others, we experience one of the absolute greatest joys in life. We give our love out, and we receive love back from others. This week, my older daughter received a Valentine from her Sunday school teachers at UUCA. Bless you. Bless you. We give all our love to you, and we get such love back from you each Sunday morning, they wrote. They sent hand-drawn pictures of the three of them at the bottom, hearts in their eyes. What a gift these loving adults offer my daughter and the other children in the class. They are teaching philia, the joy of mutual care and love. Like the UUCA Sunday school teachers, in this time of prolonged separation and distance, we have had to get creative in order to express our love and care for our friends. My spouse and I moved to Atlanta in July of 2019, leaving a close-knit group of friends in Connecticut. And while we were excited to make new friends here in Atlanta, we have also actively mourned the loss of the community that we were and are a part of. Pandemic life put our plans to nurture new friendships on hold, as you can imagine, and it has further isolated us from the community that we otherwise would have traveled to see during the winter holidays. This past year at Christmas time, rather than traveling to see friends and family in the snowy north, we were isolated even from each other, as I came down with a very mild case of COVID and, as advised, stayed away from my husband and my kids for about 10 days. On the last day, before we were reunited, our Connecticut friends sent us a video that filled my heart with bursting love and gratitude. Each family took turns singing a part from Les Miserables. One day more, they sang. They hammed it up. They belted it out. They sang with such passion and feeling that I knew profoundly that they too had felt the pain that we had felt during our separation, that they cared deeply for all of us and above all desired our happiness. I rejoiced that they were celebrating with us as we prepared to be together again. The love of friends has been so vital for so many of us during this time, sharing videos and joining Zoom calls and coordinating virtual congregational gatherings, book clubs and office happy hours, long distance talks with friends, socially distanced walks with new ones, new friends, porch sits and park rendezvous have become precious in ways that so many of us took for granted before. Being understood, having our needs anticipated, our feelings validated, our sorrows shared, our small victories celebrated, and space, making and holding space for all of who we are. Having our friends to do that with us helps us to feel grounded, helps us to feel connected to the truth of ourselves, helps us to feel beloved. In the last poem of his last book of poetry, published after his death, poet Raymond Carver asks, "And did you get what you wanted from this life, even so?" "I did." "And what did you want?" "To call myself beloved, to feel myself beloved on the earth." Let us give thanks for those who help us to feel ourselves beloved on this earth. And let us hold in loving care all those who in this moment do not feel beloved. Let us hold them with tender, warm-hearted compassion, those we know and those we have never met. In so doing, we find our way to the third form of love, agape. This Greek word is used for love in ancient Greek texts and in the Christian scriptures. Father John Bacchus writes in the Huffington Post that agape appears in Homer 10 times. 3 times it appears in Euripides, and it appears 320 times in the Christian Bible. Agape is the word used to describe both the love that God has for the world and the love that humans have for God, and for a selfless kind of love that human beings can hold for others. Think of the example of Jesus of Nazareth. Indeed, agape is considered by many to be sacrificial, a love that asks nothing in return. Agape, Bacchus writes, says, "I love you when you are not very lovable." Agape loves when it is not always convenient and when it is not reciprocated. It extends to both the deserving and the undeserving. Agape is defined by the biblical word study tools as love, benevolence, goodwill, esteem, and also as moral preference. And with that latter definition, the idea of choice is reintroduced, not in a romantic sense this time, but in both an ultimate and an altruistic sense. There is this sense in agape of an ultimate choice, the choice of love, to descend from love's high holy temple, as the poet says, and come into our sight. For what if the love that Maya Angelou speaks of is not yours for me or mine for you, nor mine for my beloved? What if it is the love that will not let any of us go? The love, that ultimate love that asks us to choose love again and again. That love that demands of us all that we are, and in so doing liberates us into life. This is what it means to align ourselves with this kind of love. To nurture agape in our hearts is to see our neighbor as lovable, even when it is inconvenient to do so. To offer warm-hearted, compassionate love, even to those who are different from us, those we do not understand, those who make different choices than we would. To choose the tender and demanding path of agape is to offer open-hearted, caring love to those we deem undeserving or unworthy, even to those we have judged as cowardly or morally bankrupt. This is the great challenge of faith, of Unitarian Universalism, of Christianity or Judaism or Islam, of Sikhism and Hinduism, of faith disconnected from organized religion even, but faith nonetheless. This is the great challenge of faith that demands we love our fellow human beings, demands we love one another as we have been loved, unconditionally, and inconveniently, when we did not deserve it, when we were not our best selves, when we sinned, when we messed up, when we ugly cried on the bathroom floor. This is the great challenge. Love. Look for love, even in plague times, especially in plague times. Order your values and discover a greater purpose. Choose love and keep choosing, because it is courageous and it is costly and it is solid and it is all. It is truly all we have in this life that will set us free. Oh, I pray that we can do it. Let us make it so.